The meat industry literally illegally hires children, and this is not front page news.
Welcome to Our Hen House. This is the Our Hen House interview. I'm Jasmine Singer.
I'm Mariann Sullivan.
And we are so happy today because we are going to be welcoming Björn Ólafsson, who is an animal advocacy researcher and communicator with a background in behavioral science and social research. And currently, he's also the impact specialist at Spain's Animal Welfare Observatory and a research specialist at the Better Food Foundation. You can read, and you should read, his incredibly valuable Substack at More Than Meets the Eye. Of course, it's MEAT. Welcome, Björn.
Thank you so much. Long-time listener, first-time guest. I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh. Well, we have been really excited. Mariann, I think, is one of your biggest fans, which isn't to say I'm not.
I really
but
do.
I do get a lot of your material by way of her. And so I just wanted you to know she's probably fangirling a little bit. So welcome. I'm so happy you're here. And before we get to chatting with you, just a quick reminder about the Our Hen House podcast for our listeners and our viewers. Rising Anxieties comes out on Tuesdays, The Hen Report on Thursdays, the long form interview, which is this, on Fridays, and bonus content for Our Hen House flock members comes out on Mondays. Our Hen House is a podcast and we're on YouTube. So wherever you want to listen or watch, please do, and hit subscribe, hit like, and leave comments wherever you can. Okay, Björn, back to you. So many questions. Can we start with this fascinating new opinion survey that you did for Project Phoenix in the UK? Like, I can't believe that we did not even know about this when we invited you on. And it's just the kind of thing that we always want to talk about. So tell us about how you did this research and the overall view of what you found.
Well, there's a reason you haven't heard of it. It's because it's not out yet. It's about to come out. I think when this launches, it should be out by now. But basically, Project Phoenix is a grassroots organization in the UK trying to basically get campaigning against factory farming more into the mainstream. They approached me a few months ago, and I've been friends with a lot of their employees for a long time, so we have a great working relationship. They approached me and they basically said, we want to understand exactly what the average person in the UK thinks about these issues, both to show to the general public and to understand how we can kind of shift our strategies based off of it. So I want to say I didn't do this entirely alone. I worked heavily with a Project Phoenix group, and they have a research background as well, and they are really, really strong at this type of thing. So what we did is we created a long survey, sent it off to Opinion, which is a polling platform in the UK, got a representative sample of the entire United Kingdom, and then tried to analyze the results. So we asked questions like, what percentage of animals do you think are factory farmed? In your own words, describe what factory farming is. How likely are you to reduce your meat consumption? Questions like that. And then we broke it down across demographics to see what type of themes or patterns have emerged. So there's a lot of things in there that shouldn't be too surprising, right? Most people are really against factory farming. This shouldn't shock us, right? Like when people think of it, it has a really heavy negative connotation. 67% of people are opposed to it or have significant concerns about factory farming. However, there are some interesting demographic factors in there that I think I hadn't really seen before. For one, age. Like when we think about age, we tend to think that younger people are more liberal, more progressive, more moral in a lot of these issues. But that's not exactly what I found. I found that older people are actually more likely to say factory farming is morally wrong. But younger people were more likely to say that meat consumption should be reduced, or that they had already started reducing their meat consumption. So right there, that's a really weird paradox. Like I'm trying to figure, I was talking with the Project Phoenix team for a while about this, like what possible explanations are there? It seems like in younger generations, they have less of a moral opposition, and it's more about the social aspect. Like they're more likely to want to be flexitarian or support flexitarianism, but they're less likely to have like a rigid anti-meat industry stance compared to the older generations. That really stuck out to me and really surprised me. And it's getting me to think, how can we get older people to be more open to reduction and younger people more open to like this moral side of it? That's one. I think that's the finding that really like got me.
Yeah, can I just interrupt you for 1 second?
Please, please.
And I'm, kind of going off on a tangent here, but it tracks for me because it reminds me a lot about like younger people and just like their thoughts on labels and things like that. Like in my day, it was a really big deal to come out, for example, and now it's sort of like every teenager has rainbow shoelaces, and it's like, everyone's like whatever. It just sort of reminds me of this like go with the flow vibe. Or I mean, is that resonating at all? Do you feel like that's a little apples to apples or not so much?
I think so. I would have to like, for me, I'm always a person. I gotta
Yeah,
dive
you're the
into numbers. Like, I try not to say things as like a guess, but I think there's something to that. But my personal guess is that younger people are more aware of like the cultural norms and vibes about things. It tend to be more online. And these ideas of like vegan or a flexitarianism, meat reduction, meatless Mondays, these are the types of conversations we're more likely to find online. And I think that's what's resonating with people more who are younger. I think the label thing to me, that makes me think of like flexitarianism or like people who call themselves vegan or vegetarian but really aren't vegan or vegetarian, things like that, which might be a big part of the puzzle. But to me, this really makes me think of how can we get younger people to connect this crucial issue to the heart of it? Like at the end of the day, it's not about flexitarianism, right? It's about thinking of animals as individuals worthy of moral concern, right? Like that's the end goal for a lot of us. At least it is for me. So how can we connect that with the youth?
One of the things that I was wondering about, and maybe this isn't right at all, but that I was wondering whether this had to do with the fact that younger people are just more realistic that ending factory farming. I know everybody's against factory farming, and this was in the UK, I think, where people are even more naive than other places about how prevalent factory farming truly is. So everybody's against factory farming, and younger people might just be more realistic that it's pretty widespread, and that that actually means you're going to have to reduce the amount of meat that's consumed. Does that track with the other findings that you made?
I didn't find, so we did ask, how prevalent do you think factory farming is? And we said what percentage of animals in the UK are factory farmed, from 0% to 100%. Most people put like 40%, 50%, 60%. Like that was where the vast majority of people did. About 96% of people either didn't know, or they refused to answer the question because they didn't know, or they underestimated it. So it's very, very small amount of people who are actually like right on the nose, understanding common animals. Yeah. It didn't vary much across age groups. However, I can't say for sure if it could vary across age groups, just because it was so far off from the mark that like everybody was kind of off the mark there. I can say that the younger people were open to like personal things, more like if you ask them, are you likely to reduce your meat consumption in the last couple of years? They were more likely to say yes than people over 55, for example. So that's also an advantage that we should be aware of. I mean, this is a big debate in the movement, right? Does morality go before action, or does action go before morality? I'm of the personal opinion, and all of my understanding of psychology and research into this field, that we derive our ideology and moral attitudes from what we are doing and from what the people around us are doing, not the other way around. We're the weird ones. Like we're the ones who like thought about this and started to change our behavior. Most people don't really do that.
I think that is such a crucial point. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's just so important for us all to remember that nobody else is like us, or most people aren't like us. For good or I mean, there might be good things about it, there might be bad things about it, but we cannot forget it. The things that worked for us are not going to work for everybody else. I'm sorry. Go finish your thought.
No, I agree. Like we are not our audience, and this is, I think, when I do freelance research with a lot of organizations, and often when I start working with groups, a big kind of hurdle and question I tackle with them is like, you are not your audience. Like we tend to think of like the ways that we were convinced to change our behavior or our attitudes in the past when we were 5, 10 years old, when we were 25, whatever age we were, and then take that mentality and apply it to the general population, and that will never work ever.
Okay, I don't know why it's like tangent day for me. I'm sorry, because this can get dangerous when I
I
go on
love Tangent
tangents.
Day.
Okay, good. I was just listening to a podcast.
You
and-
haven't experienced as many
Oh.
of them as I have, Bjorn, but okay.
All right, I was just listening to a podcast. I grabbed my phone to see what it was called, and it's called Adults in the Room, and it's produced by Focus, which is an NPR network out of Seattle. And it was just about this woman who's like a couple of years younger than me. She was in high school in the late 90s and in Seattle, and she was talking about how it wasn't illegal at the time for teachers to sleep with their children with their students. For teachers to sleep with their
That too.
students if the student was 18. So she was talking about like the principal was sleeping with like one of her, classmates. And a lot of this podcast is kind of going back and like untangling some of the behavior of her teachers at that time. And it became a question. A lot of it retroactively became a question about morality versus action. So it's just this is tying, together for me because I was literally just listening to it, but it is making me think like it seems incredibly immoral. And I was in high school in the 90s, but it seems incredibly immoral to like that any teacher or someone in a power position would sleep with their student, even if their student is legally an adult. And yet it was kind of commonplace in certain ways. And it just makes me think like how the idea of action before morality can relate to animal activism. And will there be a time in 30 years from now when we'll be looking back at the fact that it was actually pretty common to eat animals because it was actually legal, and yet the question becomes, was it moral? We're asking, is it moral? But is the general population asking, is it moral?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I think it makes complete sense. I don't think the average person has a distinction between social norms and morals. If you ask a random person, name an attitude or behavior you have that is moral for you, that the people around you don't have, or the people who you grew up with don't have, most people probably couldn't name one. Their idea of morality is often what the social norms are. Like, it's wrong to hurt people because that's the norm in our society. Like, it's wrong to use violence. And I mean, to be clear, violence, I think it's also morally wrong, but I think it's morally wrong because of the harm. But I think most people think of the social norm against violence and they interpret that as the morality itself. And that's what makes vegans so weird is we've often thought about these issues and we have decided to take a moral behavior that is different from the people around us. Unless you're one of those rare people who was raised by vegans, but obviously the vast majority of us are not like that. And this is like why this relates to this conversation about how do we judge history, like you were just mentioning, Jasmine. Like a comment I'm sure you've seen online, like, should we judge the signers of the Declaration of Independence because they own slaves? Like, this is a very common kind of moral quandary that people have. Like, should we judge them against our values in our time or against the values in their time, in which that was not considered as immoral as it is today? I mean, there were plenty of abolitionists there in that time as well. For me, this kind of signifies that we need to change the norms in order to change morality itself. And that's like a guiding principle that has steered so much of my personal work.
What about the fact that you found that so many people, well, there's a lot of interesting things going on here, but people are against factory farming, at least in this latest survey. And I think that's pretty widespread, not just in the UK, but like everywhere. And yet they're against factory farming, but they don't consider it the norm.
Right. Yeah.
So I guess they don't have to enter into that. They can be against it, even though it really is the norm. And it's really an information gap because at some point, if we could just make it obvious to them that banning factory farming means that they're going to have to drastically reduce meat consumption.
Yeah.
Like, does everything change, or do they manage to change their viewpoint.
This is where one of the shortcomings of surveys, I think, comes into play, because in surveys we're asking kind of these simple questions a lot of the time, and people often over answer the positive way because it's called social desirability bias. Like, people think
Right.
they don't want to seem like a bad person in a survey, even though in their daily life, they don't really care all that much. I think for a lot of people, animal welfare and animal rights is like, if we're talking about political issues, something they would agree with, but it's not their top 3 issue. It's not their top 5 issue. It's not something they would think about if they're going to a voting booth, or, obviously, when sitting down to choose what to eat for dinner. So it's something that they agree with theoretically, but then it doesn't really impact most of their daily life. And that's one of the difficulties here, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the difficulty in a way. Mariann and I, as we mentioned earlier, we love talking about this stuff. And at the end of the day, we are activists. How do you recommend that people use this information?
For me, when I was a young vegetarian, I'm vegan now, but back when I was like a vegetarian in my teens, my main goal was like, if you just talk to people and you tell them the issues, will change their mind. And
Yeah, I remember that.
I remember we all had that era, right? Like, we all went through this.
Tell everybody.
Exactly.
Tell everybody.
Exactly. Then you feel like I just watched the Odyssey. Then you feel like Cassandra talking about Troy, like, and then no one's listening to you. Like, I know the information, and then nobody like really seems to care. We all went through that. Maybe some of the listeners right now are currently in that era. My heart goes out to you. But at the end of the day, it's not really going to work. What we need to do is change like the background of the way in which we make choices. So in my work, this relates a lot to the idea of choice architecture, or changing the way that we present food to people to make plant-based food not seem like the alternative option, but the default option, the go-to option. You could also look in politics, like trying to ban meat advertising, which is done in Amsterdam, for example. Some people are talking about meat taxes. Some people are talking about investments into alternative protein and other plant-based things, which is already happening in a lot of European countries. So I'm excited, not about going up to a person and trying to get them to change their behavior, but about working together to collectively change the fabric underneath which we are working. If we can lower the barrier of access for somebody to reduce meat consumption, we're going to have a lot more success.
Well, I just saw on your, I looked at your Substack before we started talking today, and I just saw this new article about making facts go viral, which seems to relate to, like, changing the atmosphere out there, getting the facts in front of people. And we're so unbelievably bad at that.
Yeah.
We have so many compelling facts to tell, and yet, well, that's part of the problem that you point out, that there's so many of them. Can you just talk a little bit about the article and what your ideas are for? We have the info. Why can't we get it to people?
I mean, so this, a little sneak peek about my Substack process. A lot of my articles come from me being irritated at something that's happening in the world. So, as it all happening. In this instance, I was very irritated seeing everybody talking about the water usage of AI data centers, even though that's extraordinarily small compared to, as we know, animal agriculture, which is literally hundreds of times worse. And I'm literally seeing like front page coverage of major newspapers talking about this. And I'm just like streaming on my computer, like, this is not, like, animal ag is so much worse. But then I began to reflect, like, why are they talking about this issue and not the issues that we care about? And I really did a deep dive into this, and I came up with a couple of reasons. So there are a bunch of researchers who played scientific games of telephone, which I found fascinating. They would basically give people stories and then ask them to summarize the story and then pass it to another person. Then that person read it, summarized it again, and passed it to another person. So researchers are able to trace how stories change over time and which types of facts are more likely to stay within the story as it goes through this game telephone. And it's not perfect, but this is a pretty good analogy to how facts spread in the ether, into the ecosystem online, right? Which are the types of things that stay with people? So number one, it's better if we can name a villain, an enemy, an outgroup. I think the meat industry, I think the animal movement is actually not that good at this because many people feel like these facts make themselves the out group because they're the meat eaters. We always have to make sure that the meat eaters feel like they're on the in group. And then the out group should be somebody like a meat industry executive or the industry itself, for example. And like Mariann, I know you read Meeting Place all the time. They post so many scandalous pieces of information on that. It's like ridiculous the types of scandals that they have. Like they literally, like the meat industry literally illegally hires children, and this is not front page news.
To clean slaughterhouses in the middle of the night.
Like, and I'm like, this is the most ridiculous fact of all time. This should be the type of thing that the New York Times is going with, as opposed to data centers, in the middle of nowhere, for example. It also helps if we reduce the number of facts that we're actually sharing. Something we all know is like animal agriculture is bad in literally every way possible a thing could be bad at. We're almost like blessed with how terrible agriculture is in a way, because it's bad for humans, it's bad for animals, it's bad for the environment, it's bad for pandemics, it's bad for everything. But when we throw everything at the wall, nothing's really going to stick. We need to reduce the narrative to something simple. I'm sure you've probably seen like a Project Slingshot campaigns in London, for example.
Yeah. We haven't had them on, but we've definitely talked about it a few times.
And they're opening in the U.S.
Yes, I think it's San Francisco, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. They're opening. Yeah.
First San Francisco, but their hope is everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I really liked about this campaign is how simple it is, right? They're not throwing everything at the wall. They're picking one fact and just running with it and really making sure that fact like seeps into the zeitgeist. The first one, I believe, was 90% of pigs in the UK go into gas chambers, which is a really resonant fact. That's the type of thing that's going to really stick in your mind, as opposed to just talking about every tiny little thing that animal agriculture does that people aren't going to remember. And then the final thing I really think helps is we need to have high energy emotions, not sadness, not empathy. Like people aren't compelled to share information when they feel low energy, even if they feel content or sad. In psychology, we call this arousal, high arousal or low arousal. Like high arousal emotions are going to be like fear, threat, disgust, anger. These are the type of things that make you want to share something. And we can make people angry. Like that child labor story, that makes people angry. Like I'm angry right now thinking about that. Children in a slaughterhouse. Am I allowed to swear?
Oh, please.
Yes.
Are you fucking kidding me? Children in a slaughterhouse? Like that is more likely to go viral than, I hate to say it, but like an injured chicken or an animal who's suffering from a disease. That makes us feel sad. It makes us feel empathetic. It makes us feel, but it's low energy. It doesn't extend it.
It makes me think of the horse-drawn carriage industry in New York City and how, like how many pictures of horses who fell over from heat stroke have we seen or who were injured? And, it takes this incredibly heart-wrenching story of this teenager who like jumped out after his mom fell out and then he was killed. And now people are outraged. Yeah. There are so many things it hits on, issues of children, issues of, tourism because they were visiting, all of it.
Is there a way?
Change.
Is there a way to make that about an animal, do you think? I mean, it's always been like a tough sell. Like a picture of a million animals suffering just doesn't do it for people.
No.
But sometimes an individual animal can catch people's attention, or I would think it could. I'm not sure it can. What do you think?
I mean, there definitely are animals that have gone viral, but I think we need to pick the stories. This is going to sound bad, but when something horrible happens, a part of us should think, this is an opportunity to share the story widely. Obviously, we grieve for the animal and the individuals who were harmed, but I think a few years ago, I did reporting on Cedar the goat. I don't know if you know in California.
Very familiar,
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I've interviewed the lawyer, Vanessa Shakira, on the Animal Law podcast. Yeah.
Very nice. I mean, this is a perfect angle, right? And this intersects with 4-H, this intersects with like the animal industry.
Yeah.
And it makes people angry. People who don't talk about animals at all were posting about this and tweeting about this at the time. That's going to go viral way more than like a pig on a sanctuary, regardless of how charismatic that pig is. And I love pigs. I think they're so great. But like, if we're talking about what's going to breach into a larger consciousness, those moments that inflame people, we need to latch onto.
Yeah.
It's just another instance of what you were saying so strongly before, that we are not our audience.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe the picture of the pig is going to like get through to us. It's not going to get through to everybody else.
And we keep using a pig as an example. And, you know, Esther, the Wonder Pig, keeps popping into my head, like maybe the most famous pig in the world.
They did do a good job.
And why? Because they were completely anthropomorphizing her. I mean, like in a hilarious and brilliant way. But like at the end of the day, like maybe that doesn't represent her, you know, attitude or feelings at all. We don't know. So yeah, it's a lot of things to think about as your content often results in. I want to switch gears for a second. So I have an appointment later in person at a bookstore cafe here in Rochester, New York. It's called Siren and the Sea. And it's my favorite place in Rochester. And it's like the coolest place ever. Everyone there is cool. All the books are cool. Like the ethos of the place is cool. They have amazing events for the community, and they're totally vegan. The food is totally vegan. I will say, just so that because I'm saying this, that they do offer dairy milk, but they have these elaborate pastries, and now they do like sandwiches and soups and stuff, all vegan. They never mention that it's vegan. I mean, they don't hide it. Like there's like a little sign, I think, that says yes, we're all vegan or something. But like they're like, I would venture to guess that the vast majority of people who are there, and I guarantee it'll be really crowded, have no idea that it's vegan. Right. And so that makes me want to ask you about something that you've chatted about as well, which is, why do you think we should stop calling foods vegan, at least on menus? Can you tell us your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm an anti-vegan advocate for the word only. I'm for vegan in every other way, but I think the word vegan is great to talk about people and ideologies and things like that. But like, picture your most non-vegan friend or family member, a loved one. Yeah. Or like not like a carnivore, but somebody who's just like not a vegan, right? Who doesn't really care about these issues. Imagine they were to walk into a restaurant and see on a menu, you know, a house burger and then a vegan burger. What are the odds they're going to choose a vegan burger? I would say 0.000 infinite 1%. Like they're just not going to do it because the word vegan doesn't signify anything positive for them. It signals like an ideology, an identity group that they're not a part of. We're a part of that. Us talking and most people listening, we're a part of that group. So it's great for us. Like I often say, like, what I'm advocating for is actually very inconvenient for me because when I go to a restaurant, I want to see the word vegan in bright green so I know what to order. But I'm advocating for making my life a slightly bit more inconvenient, so I have to hunt around for vegan food. But at the end of the day, if you relabel that vegan burger into something that signifies something exciting or positive, like a flavor, you know, like we'll go to examples like an umami burger or like braised mushroom and onion burger, caramelized onion burger. Say where it's from, like, you know, with Chipotle spices, or signify like higher protein burger, because a lot of the vegan burgers actually have more protein than animal products. And that's obviously proteins everywhere right now, so we should jump onto that. But you basically have to give non-vegans a reason to order this. And then you just put the allergen at the bottom so that people obviously know that they're not ordering something they shouldn't be. Otherwise, they're just not going to do so. I would, if you are convinced, I would encourage you to think, if you were to walk into a vegan restaurant and you saw all of these vegan menu items, and then there was a section that was like gluten-free, or a section that was like halal or kosher, or some dietary category that you are not a part of, how likely are you to order that when you have all of these other great options over here? So why wouldn't logic apply to non-vegans? This is not something that they are a part of. So we're not giving them a reason. We're not inviting them in. The word vegan is just, it's a door when it should be an entry point, right?
Yeah, and so many people think. I mean, you people will say all the time, "I've never had vegan food" or something like
Yes.
that.
And the
Like they
cost.
think it's this really special category with all these really unusual ingredients. Like not like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So yeah, I mean that's very compelling. Of course, well, this relates to this is a good lead into your work with the Better Food Foundation and nudges, because that this has a lot to do with how you encourage people to try vegan food. And we actually recently came across some not negative, but kind of hesitant opinions regarding the potential to overstate the ease with which nudges are going to work, and how easy it is for the ones that have adopted the cafeterias or whatever that have adopted it so far have been perhaps motivated, and it might be harder than we're thinking. But even assuming that's all true, and there's probably some truth in that, but I don't know how much. But this is obviously a huge piece of the puzzle. This idea of getting the food in front of people and making it more obvious. And how does that relate to what you were just talking about, calling foods vegan? And just explain what nudges are and why they work, and maybe some of your favorites, and whether you see any weaknesses in using them. And
Yeah.
one thing that I'm curious about in both topics, calling foods vegan and in the nudges, is do you ever let people in on the fact that they're eating plant-based so that they might,
Mm.
think they might learn something, or is it just getting them to eat the food?
Yeah. Lots of great questions here. So I'll give, I'm sure many
Sorry,
of your,
there's 15 of them.
no, it's great. I love it. I love it. I mean, this is one of my favorite topics. So hit me, hit me. I'm sure your listeners probably have heard the idea of a plant-based nudge before, but I'll give a quick overview. This is basically the way in which we present plant-based food to people in order to nudge them into choosing it without removing the choice of meat or animal products entirely. So a vegan restaurant doesn't use nudges because you don't have the option of choosing meat, for example. But a cafeteria that has many vegan options and is actively trying to promote them is using nudges. The benefit of this is that the likelihood of somebody randomly walking into a vegan restaurant are low, but if we can get lots of institutions that are very familiar with people to use nudges, we kind of guide them to the plant-based options themselves. So a lot of the targets of these campaigns tend to be universities, hospitals, city governments, public places like that, where they have more of a vested interest in things like health or consumer satisfaction, as opposed to pure profit. You can work with purely profit-driven businesses, of course, but it's not like the main goal of most advocates at the moment. We'll get there. We're going to work on it, but at the moment, not. So there are many types of nudges. Like the label that we use is obviously going to be one of them. So when I was just talking about, don't call it vegan, call it something tasty or exciting. At the Better Food Foundation, we call that tasty titles. Like rename it into something that makes people want to order it. Another big one is climate friendly ratios, basically increasing the rate, the percentage of vegan food from like 10% to 50%, for example. And then plant-based default, which is kind of the gold standard, where the plant-based food is presented as the default option, and then meat eater has to opt into ordering meat as opposed to a vegan having to opt out of it. So that might put a little bit extra effort for them. Maybe have to wait for a little bit or talk to a staff member or something like that, or order in advance if it's like an event or a flight or something. So I'm obviously much more optimistic about this potential. I think this, in my opinion, can be scaled a lot easier than most other. I mean, scalability is a really important question in the movement, right? Most of our initiatives can't scale very well. And I know there has been concern and criticism, at least recently, about how easy it is for these things to scale. But I think, I mean, that's true of basically everything we do, short of like a national law, which, I think we're a little bit ways away from in most countries. So I am excited about this because we can get into environments that the average non-vegan is going to be very commonplace in, like a cafeteria or a dining hall in a university. That's a really exciting place to get these ideas into the ether, right? And Mariann, you had a question about informing people. It depends on the type food service institution, I would say. So in some hospitals, they will do the nudge. And because most people who stay at a hospital are only staying there for, hopefully, just a day or a few days, they would inform them when they leave. But if it's like a university, obviously there's no kind of off ramp there, at least like 4 years. So I think it depends a little bit on how you want to market it. If it's very short, if you're only there for a couple of hours or days or weeks, you should inform them afterwards. If it's a very long, if it's a university, maybe you could have more information that's spread about, because also in universities, people are excited about climate and health in ways that they might not be in other institutions. I've recently, I don't think it's public yet, it will be public very, very soon, created a nudge calculator where you can input information on your food service institution, the type of nudge, and then it will calculate the exact number of animal-based meals the nudge is likely to create based on
Cool.
all of the dozens of studies that I read and aggregated for this tool. It should be on the Better Food Foundation website pretty soon. So if you're curious about how this would apply to your local environment, I really recommend you use that resource that I created. I also want to say, like, we don't believe, either the Better Food Foundation or in general, that the research is ever complete. Some people approach these questions comparing the research we have to the gold standard of research that we could have. But we are a movement that doesn't have very much money, that's relatively young. We don't have a ton of research out there. Like, it's not like we have treasure troves of information that we can just turn to, right? So my perspective is always, I'm going to meet the movement where it's at. Right now, what excites me the most is plant-based nudges, is choice architectures, getting people to choose these foods more often. Based on all of the research that I've read, that's what excites me. If in 5 years a lot more evidence comes out and something else seems to be a lot better, great. But we have to meet people where they're at. People are spending money on campaigns. Volunteers are out there working. We have to keep guiding the ship as evidence comes in about the strategic direction we should be taking. And right now, it is my opinion that plant-based nudges are extremely exciting, and I think something we should be focusing on quite a bit.
Is there any way that everyday activists who aren't in an institutional food environment, not at school or a place where there's a cafeteria, can actually insert this into their own activism, or is this just something you donate to support?
I'm never going to say no to donating, especially because
I'm all for donating to support.
All for donating.
But is that the only role that a listener might play here, or is there some way to use it?
First of all, I would say, if you're curious about this, Better Food Foundation offers training and resources for free. You can come to one of our nudge trainings on the BFF website, or even join our network of activists in this way to get more tailored support. But I would say, I disagree that, Mariann, you mentioned something like a person who's not in a food service institution. Every single person on earth is in a food service institution at some point. We all go to the supermarket. We all go to restaurants. We all do something. And
that's what I meant. Is it's not just cafeterias, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's everywhere. Like, the likelihood of a supermarket listening to you compared to your university is obviously a lot lower. But activism is sometimes about, we have to work with where we are and what we have. And if you're a person, like, if you want to start talking to a restaurant owner on your street, go for it. If that's the change that you think you can make in your community, I think that's probably a really good place to start. So that's my general opinion. Like, think about where you could affect change. Come to BFF if you want more tailored resources, and we can help with that. But this is cliche, but think global, not local, right? Like, work with the community in which you're in. It's never not true.
So let's talk about the importance of impact analysis. What is it? How do you do it? Why is it important?
Great question. This is a question I work on basically every day of my life in the movement. Impact analysis, we often call it monitoring, evaluation, and learning. For me, they're basically interchangeable. Is understanding what actions of a nonprofit are actually doing on the world. Are they creating the change that we think they're creating? If not, do we need to pivot anything? Do we need to change strategies? And then how do we actually monitor the actual real tangible change for animals that's happening in the real world? It's basically a form of specialized research. So a research project that I would work on might be for everybody. I'm making a resource that anybody in the movement can benefit from. An impact analysis report that I might create is targeted at one organization. These 3 campaigns had this much impact. This one didn't work as well. We might need to pivot our strategy. Still the same underlying concepts there, like using evidence to guide our actions, but in a different level.
Not to make this all about us, but I'm about to. This has always been such a challenge for us because, media, you kind of put it out there. It's like you cast your bread upon the water, you cast your vegan advocacy upon the water. And it is very hard to prove to be. Of course, we occasionally get some information back about somebody who's done something. It's not like completely absent, but it's pretty hard to track. Any suggestions?
You're completely correct. The hardest type of organization to do this for is what we might call a meta organization or a capacity building organization, an organization that works with other nonprofits as opposed to a different audience like the general public or politicians or corporations or whatever. So it depends. Like what you're trying to do at our hen house, correct me if I'm wrong, this is my understanding, is you're trying to get the entire movement to have a better understanding of the issues we're working on, of how the movement is connected, about the strategies that aren't working, and then maybe even creating collaborations through the work that you're spreading. Did I get that right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Write that down.
Yeah, could we put that into an email appeal or something? Thanks.
Take it. Send that to a funder if you want. That's totally fine. So basically, what you need to do is I say this with all respect, and I've worked with many meta organizations, but the likelihood of our mouse being directly responsible for helping an animal is pretty low compared to another organization.
Yeah, no, we admit that.
Right.
We're not deceiving ourselves.
Okay. So when you work with capacity building organizations, you have to think of what are the proxy indicators for that type of change. If you're able to create a collaboration between 2 organizations that creates a lobbying pass, for example, that's an indicator that what you're doing is working. You created a collaboration and then went on to help an animal. Or if organizations have said they have changed strategies based on something they've heard on your podcast, and then that creates more positive impact, that's another indicator of your success.
And it's not just so you know, 16 and a half years ago when we started our hen house, it was really the driving force was to embolden the individual to take action to create change. And it was because we both had backgrounds in top-down organizational campaigns where people were really waiting for directives about what to do, and frequently those were to donate $20 to such and such, which is important. I'm not saying it's not, but I was a campaigns manager before co-founding our hen house with Mariann, and it was very hard for me because a lot of people wanted to really get involved and they just had absolutely no idea what to do. And so it's not just the organizations, but it's the individuals, and that idea just makes me want to ask you, where do you stand on the importance of individual action to create change for animals? Because, at the end of the day, we're just one person. But if we're with an organization, we could be part of, endless amounts of individuals. And yet, I think the individual action is perhaps most important, but I can't make sense of that statement. It's more of a vibe, if you will.
Right. There's this quote from Cloud Atlas, which is a book and also a movie. The book is way better, but I'm going to paraphrase. And it's always stuck with me when I first read it, which is, what is an ocean but a multitude of drops? There is no society without individuals that. I think we always think of this distinction, but at the end of the day, it's just a network of people that we're working with, right? The individual, the idea of systemic change, individual change, are not really two halves of the same coin. Like they're kind of the same thing. We're just looking at it with a different lens. So if you're an individual out there, I think individual action is great because all action is individual action at the end of the day, right? The thing I would caution you is make sure that your work and strategy and action fits into the grander scheme of things wherever you are. If you want to do activism online, what I would do is I would think, who else is making activism online around me, like talking to my communities? Is there a gap that you could fit into, for example? If you speak a different language than English and you notice there's very little activism content in your native language, like that might be the gap that you filled. And then you should think of yourself as one activist, like woven into a tapestry of everybody else, trying to fill gaps and create something beautiful that can actually make change. Because we need to, like, again, I mean, I'm going to keep going back to cliche things, but like, if we don't work together, nothing's going to get done. And I think just because you're an individual actor out there, you're not in an NGO or whatever, doesn't mean you can't think in that way. You can still derive purpose and strategy from the broader ecosystem of activism that's out there.
Yeah, I love that. That's beautiful.
And I think that is, there are such important lessons there for what we do, and encouraging people to get active, but not just get active, to do it in ways that are more effective and that create community, and then that creates more likelihood of change. All right, we don't have a lot of time left, so I want to get to the question that I ask everybody. Nobody has an answer, but I think yours is going to be you're not going to have an answer, but it's going to be a lot more nuanced non-answer than the usual
I like that.
one.
I like that. A great answer.
It's basically about cognitive dissonance. The question that we always ask is not expecting people to have an answer, but just interested in how they think about it. Like, why do people who love animals ignore the facts? Which, all right, they don't know the facts, but there's a lot of energy going into not knowing the facts at this point. It's not like 40 years ago when people really didn't know. Why do they still participate in it? Why do they still eat them? How is this still getting on? How is it getting worse and worse? People who love animals, there are some people who really don't care, but really a lot of people do. Why?
The question, right? Yeah, I agree. I mean, I wrote about cognitive dissonance a few months ago when I was, again, like I mentioned, getting angry at seeing people talking about the Billie Eilish, the comment sections on anything talking about Billie Eilish at the time. I'm sure we all saw them, were very frustrating to look at. But then I'm starting to reflect as well, like, well, let me back up. What cognitive dissonance is basically tension between two things that exist within somebody's mind, and we have to either remove one or reduce its importance in our brain in order to move on without this dissonance. So for most people, this is, I often put it into three ideas, which is, number one, I'm a good person. 99% of us think we're good people. Number two, good people are good to animals. And number three, eating meat harms animals. So these are logical statements that don't really, this sounds like a LSAT question or something, but like they don't work together. Like you can't put them together in a way that is allows you to move forward without this tension, right? So what most people like, are people just going to suddenly believe they're bad people? No. Are they going to suddenly believe that good people are bad to animals? No. So this is a third thing, this idea that eating meat harms animals, that they start to diminish in their brain. They do this by either minimizing the extent of factory farming, avoiding information about factory farming, reducing the connection between the individual action, which is eating meat, and the connection to the animal agriculture industry by saying my actions don't really affect anything. But it's always that third thing that people focus on. But then I began to think about this. My first thought was, how can we get people to change their behavior as opposed to their attitudes? But then I began to think to myself, this might not be the right question, because once cognitive dissonance is already evoked in somebody's brain, it's like a boulder rolling down a hill. Like it's already on a path. Like it's 90% of the time, it's going to go in the exact same direction, no matter how well constructed our arguments are. If you've ever had like a fight with somebody and they're defensive and their walls are up, the likelihood of you like getting them to change their mind, like you've already lost. Like the argument is irrelevant, right? Like it's irrelevant at that point. It's just about attitudes. So for me, I'm like, I think a different way to look at it is, instead of why does this dissonance exist, it's more about how can we avoid activating this dissonance in the first place by getting people to think about these issues before they're like, this is triggered, for lack of a better word. Don't have this conversation after somebody's defensive. Like, we should be trying to preempt this. I feel like the movement so often, we're always playing defense. We're always playing defense. We're always reacting to things. And I think as activists, we should be a bit more cognizant about how can we set the scene for our own arguments and ideas to really like create change in a way that's not in reaction to somebody else. Once somebody sees a Billie Eilish video and is defensive, we're reacting to that defensiveness, as opposed to creating an environment where someone is more likely to listen, for example.
Yeah, I mean, I just the pop culture thing. My algorithms right now are like obsessed with Ariana Grande, and it's obviously it's a different subject, but it's making me really think about all people are doing is reacting and saying we should. Why can't we have a discourse around like this aspect of culture glamorizing skinniness or whatever? And it's like, dude, then do it, like
yes. I think it's perfect. It's a perfect analogy, because the culture is just a series of choices that we're all making at the same time. And if we're just bemoaning something that already exists in the world, we're not really changing it. We're just making ourselves feel better about it in the moment. So sometimes I feel like this is my nuance, Mariann, they're going to use it to your question, is like, I don't think that's the right question. I think the question is, how can we approach this conversation, for lack of a better term, on the offensive, create a situation in which somebody's more likely to have a behavior change or attitude change that would benefit animals. That, to me, is what guides my life's work. But I'm also guilty of this, by the way. Like, I get angry looking at social media comments all the time. This is a human nature thing, but I constantly have to think to myself, reaction is less powerful than action.
Does that fit into into nudges? I mean, are nudges a form of action?
I think so, because like, if you go up to somebody when they're eating meat and talk to them about the issues, they're not going to be convinced. But people, like one of the studies I looked at, people who eat meat are literally more likely to avoid information about animal sentience in like the hour after it happens, compared to when they eat plant-based foods. So if you're able to create an environment where plant-based food is normal and the default, those conversations are more likely to have positive outcomes.
You talked about the difference between the way men and women process these arguments, and I can't remember what it is you said, so I'm kind of hoping you remember what you said, because I thought it was so interesting, and now I don't remember it.
Women were more likely to reduce the connection between their actions and factory farming, where like meat reducing my consumption won't actually help animals, whereas men were more likely to say animal experiences don't matter. So like they're like,
that tracks. I mean, not 100%, obviously, because no gender differences track 100%.
Of course, right.
It does really. That resonates.
Yeah. Women are, I mean, in general, we all know women are more likely to be vegan, vegetarian, be in the movement. Like, this is an extremely well documented thing. That I think this might be one piece of the puzzle as to why, not the only one, but men are more likely to reduce the morality of animals, whereas women are like, oh yeah, no, farmed animals matter, but there's no ethical consumption under capitalism, or something, like whatever thought terminating cliche it happens to be, right? Like something to that effect. Whereas men are more likely to say like, yeah, fuck them pigs.
Yeah.
You know what this, okay. I honestly, Bjorn, I have made more pop culture references in this episode than I have in any other episode, but I'm about to make another one. Okay, awesome. I'm going to make another one. I had read, I read a lot, and I read a lot of just, stupid ass novels that do not matter at all in the grand scheme of things. It's like how my brain deals with everything else that does matter. And I had read this book that is now made into like a TV show, and it was called The 5-Star Weekend by Ellen Hildebrand, and now it's like with these massively famous actors whose names I'm forgetting, but Jennifer Garner is starring in it, and Chloe Sevigny is in it, and yada yada. And I was watching it, and it's terrible, like really terrible. But there was this one scene in it where like one of the people is canceled because she's sort of caught. She's like a manager, and she's caught telling her young influencer client that she has to like buck up and do the tennis match, even though the tennis player said she's too tired to do it and she needs some time off. And she was like, you have to do it anyway, buck up. So she gets completely canceled publicly. And, flash forward a week or so, and she's shopping with a friend of hers. She picks up a sweater off the rack and she's like, what is this fabric? And the friend says, I think it's made out of goat. And she's like, oh, is it ethical? And the friend goes, and she goes, fuck it. I've already been canceled. And so she goes and buys it. And it's making me think of what you just said, because it's like, I think a lot of people's thought process begins and ends with, well, I'm already doing all of these things anyway.
Right.
Like, why would I stop at buying this sweater? I'm just wondering if you can illuminate a bit on that. I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
I mean, I think this matches perfectly. To me, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier about morality and norms. Like for this character, I haven't seen the show. It sounds very fun. I didn't watch it. But for this character, like doing the right thing seems to be for her is like obeying social norms about things.
Yeah.
And once you violate one norm and got canceled, it seems like disproportionately canceled. She's like, why should Balor following the rest of the norms that are, I'm already like gone past the line. This is why I think in our advocacy, we always have to make sure that the person we're talking to feels like they're on the in group and not the out group, even if we disagree with their behavior, like eating meat. Because once they feel like they're on the out group, it's like, why should I, like, if you're not going to welcome me in, why should I put the effort of wanting to join? Right?
Yeah, totally.
So
that has a lot to do with like, do you have to go completely vegan in order to be acceptable? Sorry.
No, I agree. Like for me, I like, let's welcome everybody into the movement as much as we can. I think we should have like a moral guiding principle of like farmed animals matter morally. I think that should be something, in my personal opinion, that we all can agree to, regardless of your personal dietary choices or your type of activism or your strategies. Like this is kind of like a guiding anchor for a lot of us. And we always want the out group to not be the person we're talking to. It should be big meat. It should be the CEO of Tyson. It should be the industry thought. It should be a politician who's fighting for the Saab Act, for example. We always want to welcome people inside. And I don't think we're very good at this in general.
Well, yeah, but it's like, back in the day when we started our activism journeys, our vegan journeys, the big thing was like welfare versus abolition. I know it still goes on, but I mean, it was big. Like 20 years ago, it was everywhere. And now I think it's transitioned more to like, vegan rhetoric, vegan advocacy versus anti-factory farming. And so if the guiding principle becomes like farmed animals matter, which I agree, then I just think, well, how can you just be anti-factory farming then? If this is to me our struggle now, whereas 20 years ago it was more the welfare.
It's kind of the same struggle, though.
It might be. It's potentially the same struggle, although it's just nuanced in a different way. What do you think, Bjorn?
Yeah, history doesn't repeat, but it does rhyme. I think this is one of those examples of it, right? Like when Louis Fowler finished his TED talk, like his ask for the audience was like, I'm going to paraphrase, but don't stop talking about factory farming. I didn't tell people to go vegan or to do anything else, but it's just like, as long as we can create a culture and a community of people who take these ideas seriously, I think the behaviors are going to follow. And I think we have to always start by welcoming people in without compromising our mission rather than exclusion. Like there's a phrase like, we need to build a bigger tent. This is an issue that like how many people work on this profession in the world? Like a couple thousand, maybe tens of thousands. I don't know. Like not a lot. A lot of people, but there's way more people who care about this. And we need to make sure that they feel like they're part of the mission. Yeah.
Well, I've always thought that sort of the trick has a lot to do with being a really, really good communicator and a nuanced communicator, so that you can characterize yourself as being both anti-factory farming and anti-meat consumption. There's nothing inconsistent about those things.
Absolutely.
But sometimes people feel like just in saying they're anti-factory farming, they're kind of giving up on being anti-consumption. But you don't have to be, as long as you communicate very carefully, try not to put people off, but never give up, never betray the animals. Like just be careful in how you talk about it. I think that's the trick. And it's very, very tricky. I don't think any of us get it right all the time, but it's part of the burden of being an animal activist.
This is something I was thinking about when I started my Substack, because there's a lot of blogs and Substacks and resources related to factory farming, animal welfare, climate change. All of that stuff exists, but I feel like talking about meat reduction is a lot less common. And I wanted to kind of bring this issue to the forefront with my individual work that I could do, because it is like, there is no future in which we reduce factory farming without reducing meat consumption. That is impossible. You can talk about, we all know this here, but like we can talk about regenerative ag all you want.
It's ridiculous.
Like there's not, like, maybe if we have like a little bit of regenerative ag and like or something, but these are not scalable solutions. The only scalable solution is meat production. And I think for me personally, I noticed that gap, and I want to take meat reduction as a concept. That's why I named it More Than Meets the Eye. It's not about factory farming for me personally, even though that's a great cause. I love, like, that's not the way that I'm branding my work.
Right.
So we have to solve meat consumption. Like we have to. It's not the only challenge, but it is a load bearing challenge for everyone.
I couldn't agree more. And it's also important because it reflects the integrity of the advocate. Like in your case, focusing on meat reduction as opposed to anti-factory farming, if I'm paraphrasing correctly, is speaking your truth in a way that someone else might be talking about anti-factory farming. Ultimately, maybe you have the same bottom line, but it is different. I really appreciate that so much, the idea of focusing on meat reduction. And we really should probably conclude this main interview, because we do want to keep you on for a few minutes for a bonus interview for our flock. And I know it's like 900 degrees there, and you had to turn your fan off because it was making too much noise for the microphone. So we're a little worried you're going to pass out or faint or
don't worry,
or melt. And so final question, and I have no idea what it is, even though I look like I do. Final question, Bjorn. What do you want to start writing about within animal advocacy? Like, what little idea do you have that's growing that maybe you haven't explored as much as you would like to?
That's a great question. I have a Google Doc.
Because I planned that. I had it. I've written that question down. I've known for hours I was going to ask it.
No, I like it. The answer is I have a Google Doc of half-formed ideas percentage post that's probably 15 pages long at this point. Like I could not have another idea for like the next couple of years, and I would still be writing for a long time. Because I think about this stuff. I feel like it's in my blood. Like I feel like if you cut me open, I would bleed meat reduction facts. That's the nerdiest thing I ever said. But like, I just think about this constantly. I would say that themes that I'm really excited about exploring over the next couple of months for me are, number one, something we talked about earlier, which is like the difference between societal and individual action. I feel like we are not good at talking about this binary, and how we can get individuals to relate to systemic actions is something, it's a bit philosophical, which is not my bread and butter, vegan butter, of course, but it is something that we should I am excited about looking into more. And then another thread, something I poked at earlier this year, which is, what does it mean to be a pre-vegan? Like, what is a pre-vegan? Do they exist? I have some exciting posts coming up about, I'm doing a deep dive into flexitarianism as a concept that I've been working on for a long time. This one, I think a lot of people will be excited about. And then I'm going to create my typology, like categorization of different types of pre-vegans. Because I think we think about pre-vegans as flexitarians, and I think that's wrong. I don't think a flexitarian is a pre-vegan. Maybe that is controversial. Maybe you disagree with me. But if you want to disagree with me, you're going to have to follow me to see exactly what I have to say.
And where can they follow you?
You can subscribe to More Than Meets the Eye, MEATS, on Substack. You don't even have to have an account. You could just put your email in. I don't charge because I want these resources to be accessible for everybody, because this isn't about making money. I want the movement to be stronger, more strategic, and ultimately more impactful.
Well, with your guiding words and guiding thoughts, I think that we're set up for so much more success than we have been in the past. So Björn Ólafsson, I just want to thank you so much for spending all of this time with us today. And we will link to Björn's writing in the show notes. And if you're in the flock, which I hope you are, please stay tuned, because on Monday we will be releasing a bonus content for you, which we're about to chat about. I have some thoughts that I'm excited to ask you about. But Björn, thank you so much for spending some time with us today on our Hen House.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
We'll keep writing. We'll keep reading and talking about it as well. If you're watching and listening, thank you for watching and listening. You can donate and become a flock member at ourhenhouse.org/support. And make sure you stay tuned for Rising Anxieties coming on Tuesday, which is the day after the Björn bonus content comes out. That was said beautifully, Jasmine. Good job, Jasmine. Thank you, Jasmine. All right. Talk to you next time.